Well, let me tell you, DNA evidence has a lot of holes in it. And as of right now, from what we know, this knife sheath with DNA was the only thing that ties Kohberger to these. That's the only thing that places him at the scene.
They're hoping that there's something else there. It's not there.
It says that he could be a potential match. And what the defense is saying is, what test did you use to determine the factors that matched him? Because remember, there's an additional layer. They initially determined that it matched his father because of DNA that his father submitted through one of those programs like Ancestry.com. And
this whole case could very easily fall apart if the state doesn't allow and grant this information to the defense. It is a hard sell for myself to believe that Poindexter over there went full ninja on 4 individuals at different times.
The other thing that I am concerned about is this is a death penalty case. It's probably more wise for me to allow it than not allow that method. It's especially important in a case like this to have a record for appeal.
Seems like me and the judge are the only ones on the same page. And if you're one of those people who is just primarily focused on vengeance, and that's all you care about, then you need to stick around and get some education, because you got a lot more to worry about than what you're being told. So let's get into it. So the judge denied the stay. And as I said in this video right here, we knew it was going to be an uphill battle. And I honestly didn't see him granting this, at least not fully. He did reference that the affidavit was vague, and there was mention of the number of people actually used in the grand jury hearing, according to News Nation. I'll link that article below. But it would have set a precedence in the state of Idaho that would have affected a whole lot of cases that had already been heard, tried, sentenced, and everything like that. So this was a long shot. Now, first off, that sheath that everybody is so warm and fuzzy about. You got to remember, it went to their state lab, and they didn't come up with a thing. And I had heard it went to a FBI facility, and they didn't come up with anything either. And then they went the third-party route, and they did that genealogy testing. And like I said in my previous video, yes, they used one of those genealogy facilities from a family member. Now, which one has yet to be disclosed. So that sheath is not directly connected to Bryan Kohberger. According to the state, it's directly connected to his father. And through his father's genealogy, they're saying, okay, it's the descendant. It's a descendant of the father, which is fine. But that and that alone is not enough for a open and shut case. You still have DNA of 3 other individuals, and the defense is requesting the DNA results of those 3 other individuals. Now the state wants to get up there and make this response.
Any response?
Your Honor, we didn't realize this was going to be an issue today.
What do you mean you didn't realize this would be an issue? They have been asking for these results going back to when this motion was filed. And if you are looking for justice, you don't want in any way, shape, or form for Bryan Kohberger, if found guilty, to have a way out, to have an appeal. Even the judge says it. He says it right here.
We don't want this to come back on the eve of trial.
Yes, sir.
Or, 4 years from now at an appeal.
Yes, sir. We have given the defense everything that we received from the lab. They've asked for DNA workups on other people. To the extent that they don't have them, they weren't done. We can't produce something that doesn't exist.
So yes, I understand everybody's saying that the other 3 DNA samples found at the scene are irrelevant because that was a home that a ton of people went in and out of all hours of the night, all hours of the day. Well, wouldn't there be way more than 3 DNA samples if that was the case? And if I was the prosecution, I want to present that evidence to the state to prove that the only other individual within that home was the accused. But they want to get up there and say they don't have it. It's never been produced. Okay, fine. Why has it never been produced?
From my work on the forensic genealogy, what I've seen is that when a match is found, when the STR match is found, then all building out, all further testing stops on the forensic genealogy side.
As a prosecutor, I would want any and all evidence made available to myself, to the state, and to the defense. It gives me the impression that they were only focused on this one sample. They didn't care about any of the other samples, and they ordered just the one. And for the state to sit there and say, look, we need to know how you derived from this DNA sample it was Bryan Kohberger's father, because they brought up these experts. And it is not as simple as slide the sheath in or put a swab on the sheath and put it in an analyzer and push a button. There are specific Department of Justice rules that the state would have to follow, and that hasn't been disclosed. There are specific rules for how this evidence is analyzed, and that hasn't been disclosed. And the defense can't hire the right genealogist or the right DNA expert because they don't know how they extracted that this DNA sample belonged to Bryan Kohberger's father. And once again, if you're concerned about vengeance, sure, whatever. But most of us are concerned about justice, and you are giving the defense an out. So if you don't have those other samples and they can't be produced, do not get up in front of a judge and say, I wasn't aware it wasn't going to be an issue. It was clearly going to be an issue because she requested it in the motion. So you at the very least need to have some sort of sworn statement or statement of record to put in front of the judge stating, we have this sample, these other 3 samples were not done, list a reason why they weren't done and not relevant, and put it on record. But you haven't done that because you're over there being small town justice thinking this thing's just going to be smooth sailing. And if you're like me and you are legitimately concerned about justice, the state is dropping the ball on this issue. And the judge needs to grant this motion so there is no way in 3, 4, however many years an appeal can be filed against them. And you heard him say it earlier. He doesn't want this to come up in an appeal. You had the state lab's unexpected correction action logs and unexpected results logs that they want 6 months before and 6 months after.
We also don't have the unexpected corrective actions, unexpected results from the Idaho State Police Forensics Lab for the 6 months before and the 6 months after.
I don't know what exists that we haven't received. We provided all the requests to the lab, and they've assured us that they have provided us with everything that they have within the scope of those requests. I'm not sure what else to say. I mean, we can make a supplemental inquiry to clarify that after we finish in court today. But I'm kind of sitting here saying, Judge, was giving me everything we know to exist.
Well, that would be wise to check on that.
We will.
Because
once again, the state should be providing this information at full scope beforehand because it allows all parties to view the accuracy of this particular state lab. Now, the defense has said they only received a small scope of this, that they haven't received the full year. But the judge is right here, okay? He understood Ann Taylor's doing her job. She should be looking under every stone. He even referenced that if you go to the actual footage of the court. But the judge even said it. If it isn't there, then it isn't there. Now, where the state's dropping the ball on this is they haven't submitted anything for record to the defense and to the judge that states, as far as these unexpected results and these action logs, we have from this time frame to that time frame, and that is all that is available. And put it on record. Once again, if you are leaving even a hint of doubt, you are increasing the risk for there to be an appeal, or there may be a chance that the jury makes the wrong decision. Okay, the burden of proof falls on the state. Now, I understand that that the DA is experienced, and in fact, he's probably getting ready to retire at some point. But there's not a whole lot of incidents in Moscow of this type that we're aware of. So he needs to step it up. Because in a scenario where Bryan Kohberger, committed these acts, if that's the case, any and all little wiggle room he is going to try to exploit, and he should, and that's his right, and the defense is going to try to exploit it. So as the prosecution present this stuff, of course he'll go tell the judge, we'll request a supplemental review. Why didn't you do this already? Once again, it is in the motion. She has asked for this. This is not a surprise. It wasn't going to go away unless you were just sitting there thinking that, okay, the judge is just going to wave his magic wand and disregard everything that the defense is asking for. If you hadn't noticed, the judge is very aware of what's at stake. Okay, 4 lives were lost, and there is nothing we can do about that to bring them back. And it's a horrible tragedy, absolutely horrible tragedy. The only thing that makes it worse at this point is if an innocent man is found guilty and sentenced to ultimately, this is a DP case, so he's only going one way, or a guilty man through shoddy prosecution gets away with it. So the judge is granting a whole lot of leeway to the defense because there is so much on the line. 4 lives are already lost, and they want to make sure, because of what's at stake, if one more life is lost, it is the one that needs to have this punishment happen. But the state just seems to not care. Put this stuff in writing and move on. Let's move forward. I am glad the judge didn't grant an extension because it sets a horrible precedence. From that point on, every criminal case in that state, they would have referenced back to the Bryan Kohberger case saying, well, they got the extension, they kept getting these extensions, and we're waiting on this one letter from the cashier that he, so-and-so met 10 years ago, so we can't move forward. They're not going to allow that. And of course, finally, and Taylor brings up the electronic messages played here.
Just for a point of clarification, we also ask for all emails, text messages, along with electronic messages or other messages. Some have been provided, but we don't have assurance that that's all.
Okay, Mr. Thompson.
We have told them, we have given them everything that we know to exist. Ms. Jennings is making a note right now. We'll send the inquiry out later today.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
And what does the prosecution do at this point? Once again, we told them we don't have them. Okay, you're not taking Bryan Kohberger's word on his alibi, Mr. Prosecutor, so why would they take your word that you don't have them? How does this make sense? I cannot be the only one seeing this. So if you have given the defense every single electronic communication pertaining to this DNA, which they are focusing on because it is, once again, the only thing tying him to that scene. Don't even bring up the cell phone records. I'll get to that in a second. This sheath is the only thing tying him to the scene. And it wasn't tying him directly. It was indirectly. And how they went about getting that data has not been made clear to anyone at this point. and how they analyzed it. It is not clear to anyone at this point. So if you have sent them every single electronic record pertaining to this case, why would you not already have in hand or sent electronically to the defense for submission in the court a statement of record from these facilities saying this is all we have, everything has been presented, we have no other documentation of any type available? And then of course the judges over there, you heard them, man, it might be wise to get that. Mistakes happen. Things fall through the cracks. There's human error. He tells the prosecution this. He's giving them leeway. He is politely saying, hey, dude, get your crap together. This is a high-profile capital case with the DP. Get your crap together. And, of course, the state goes over there and says, okay, well, we'll make an additional inquiry. You should have already done that. Now, yeah, I understand. I upset a few people about this sheath. No, it did not directly tie him. They tied it to his father through genealogy testing, and I told you that's what they did in that previous video, and then they backtracked with it. So, but once again, how they derived that it was Bryan Kohberger's father, they still have a lot of questions about. And Steve Mercer, the attorney from Maryland who deals with a lot of these, straight up told the judge, hey, look, we've reversed cases because of shoddy evidence gathering pertaining to this genealogy. It is still very new, and it is not rock solid. So the state needs to get their crap together and be just a hair more concerned about what's going on here. You heard the state, and Taylor is regarded as one of the best criminal defense attorneys in that state. So it's time to step it up there, Santa Claus, and get with it. Because if you lose anything on this sheath, all you have past that is the FBI, CAS system, whatever. Let me know below if you know specifically what it's called. I can't recall it at the time. But that data right there, they said, ties him to the area during the scene of the crime. And depending on how accurate it's reading at that time dictates how tightly close they can get him to that home. And I know they made reference to his phone connecting to the Wi-Fi. Just so a lot of y'all are aware, when I drive down my own road, and these houses are fairly off this road, understand that. I'm not talking about city living. There ain't no city living around here. My phone, if my Wi-Fi is turned on, detects Wi-Fi signals going all the way out to the interstate. And I am nowhere close to any one of these houses. So don't sit comfortably on this whole Wi-Fi connection. There's not a whole lot going on around Moscow, Idaho. Now, yeah, his alibi, that's not an alibi I would have went with, but they went with it. And yes, the judge is right. If that's the alibi you're going to use, and you have names to validate your alibi, you need to present it to the state and not sit on it. And I don't think they're going to sit on any names because he typically drove alone, according to the defense. And we have heard through several other reports for, when his neighbors in his apartment complex, they said he was up all night vacuuming. So just for me, like I say, this whole case could very easily fall apart if the state doesn't allow and grant this information to the defense. They cannot give these people 1 inch of wiggle room any more than the defense would give the prosecutors any wiggle room. 4 amazing lives have already been lost, and it is absolutely awful. And if we want the right one to pay for this, the state needs to step it the hell up. Because it is not as open and shut as you may think. It is a hard sell for myself to believe that Poindexter over there went full ninja on 4 individuals at different times, and it was very loud, and left so little DNA evidence behind. And I would hope that between the apartment, his car, his storage building, and the parents' home, they have a whole lot more to back up and validate what they are accusing him of. Because the only thing worse, once again, than Bryan Kohberger being on trial for this is him being accused and actually doing it and getting away with it because the state did such a shoddy job investigating, or him getting accused and charged and the real perp is running these streets right now being a little combat ninja. So we're going to sit back and wait and see what the judge ultimately decides on this motion here for the genealogy data. I do believe the defense laid out a perfectly reasonable explanation as to why they need that set of information. And I also believe it's in the state's best interest to not fight this. Give it to them. So that way during trial, there is no room for doubt, because that is all the defense is looking for. Just one person, one little bit of doubt. That's all it takes. So if you are just sitting there wanting vengeance, as I said in the beginning, this ain't for you. But most of us want real legitimate justice for those victims and for the family. And you're gonna have to do everything on the up and up for this to be done properly. And if you like what you see here, I've got a playlist set up already with everything else I've done on Idaho. I'll do another update when I have it. For those that stuck around this long, now I appreciate it. For the rest of y'all, I still appreciate it. So that's what I have. Let me know below what you thought about this hearing. Did you watch the whole thing or did you catch highlights? Like I said, that DNA on that sheath is not as rock solid as they think. And that can very easily have holes poked all through it. And that's what I have. That's what I got. I appreciate your time. I appreciate you being here. Y'all stay safe and I'll catch you in the next one.